All right, we are live or rolling anyway. Roman Bystrianyk, welcome to the Terrain Theory podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Roman, you co-authored the book Dissolving Illusions, which is one of the top books on our research page on terraintheory.net. It was definitely a book that shaped my journey into this space. And you've got an excellent intro that talks about what prompted, what inspired you to dive into this topic. And I thought maybe you could just share the shorter version of that with us first to kick this off.
Sh Sure. I just grew up a normal guy. I went to school as an engineer and programmer. That's what I was doing, right? Around 30 years old, I wasn't feeling too good because I was a normal guy eating pizza, drinking beer, and all sorts of stuff like that, right?
Yep.
So my friend at work gave me this book called Dr. Atkins' Health Revolution, which was a low carb diet. And I was like, well, that's ridiculous. But I gave it a shot. And after a week, I felt great. I was like, wow. And it was the first time I had to say, why don't I know this? I should know this, right? So I started listening to him on the radio and then different health topics. This is like 30 years ago, so I don't really remember what he was talking about. Then one day he wasn't on the air, and there was another guy called Gary Null from New York, and I started listening to him. And I'm like, oh, he's very interesting. He's actually more interesting. He's got more things he talks about. And so I started listening to him, and he was talking about all sorts of different health topics. And he's a vegetarian, vegan kind of person. So I said, well, let me try that. I switched over to that, and I've been sticking with that ever since. But anyway, he would have different things on there, including programs on neurological damage from vaccines.
Mm.
And I'm like, oh, wow, I don't know anything about that, right? I never heard about that. I just kind of knew they were safe and effective, right? That was like in my mind. And I thought, okay, so some people get damaged, but we used to have plagues, so it's horrible, but this is kind of like what you have to do to save the majority from all these horrible plagues, right? So that was my thinking. And then but I picked up a few books and started doing some reading, and I got a busy life. I just had some kids and doing my engineering work and just life. So I browsed through these books, and I eventually picked up one by Neil Miller, and in there he had a little chart, and the chart said that vaccine deaths declined by 98% before there was a vaccine for measles. And I thought, this guy's insane. And I actually took the book and threw it on my coffee table and said, well, that guy's a nutball. He just made up something. And, but my curiosity got the better of me. So I went to a local library and went through some almanacs. And I finally found almanacs that had mortality rate every 10 years, the statistics for measles, and maybe a couple other diseases. But anyway, so I charted on a piece of graph paper. This is like 30 years ago. And, there was basically the same chart. So I just sat there for a long time. I remember where I was sitting, what library I was in, and I'm like, this can't be true. This cannot be true. I just refused to believe it. I just kind of just shook my head. I was like, I looked at the data, looked at the chart, and like, this can't be true. It really just, it didn't compute because I knew they wiped out all the diseases. So this just didn't make sense. So in my own mind, I said, well, the almanac's probably wrong. I just thought it was. So I was able to get to Yale Medical in New Haven, Connecticut, and they have a nice library there. And I walked in there. I was able to get in there, and I found these tall green books called U.S. Vital Statistics. So I took all the data from various books because they're not all in one particular book. They're spread out over the years from 1900 all the way to 1970s. And so I photocopied the pages I wanted. I took them home and put in my Excel spreadsheet, and then had to go back once or twice to get all the years because I missed a few. And then I created a chart, and it showed the same thing, but in great detail. Actually, Niels said 95% down. It actually was 98% down in mortality rate. And so I I couldn't argue with the data. I double, triple checked it. And years later, I found the same chart in a CDC publication, a vital statistics publication. Somebody had hand drawn it in the 60s. So the data is spot on. And then you have to ask yourself, well, if it wasn't the vaccines, why do we think it's the vaccines? And if it wasn't the vaccines, then what did cause the mortality decline? And this was just a hobby or just a curiosity. And I just kept on digging and digging and accumulating data. And then I started taking some of the information and just writing these proto chapters just to understand the information. And I also did the charts for whooping cough and scarlet fever and these other diseases, and they showed the same thing, a big decline in mortality rate. And then I was able to get data from the UK, England and Wales, and they started gathering data in 1838, and it showed even a more massive decline in I got some charts we can look at, uh, by almost 100% for measles and whooping cough before they came up with the vaccine.
Mm.
So it's like, mind blown, right? And that's what got me going. And then I started again, and I'd work on that because I had life. I didn't wasn't really focused on this, but I was just compelled to keep on investigating. And then I started writing more. Actually, I started the book once, and then I took the whole thing and threw it in the garbage because I was like, I'm not going to do this. But so I had this kind of prototype book, and I thought, gee, I need a doctor to get some support with this, make sure I'm not like off the rails. And I was listening to Gary Null, and he had this lady talking about smallpox, and I was listening. I was like, oh, she's crazy like me. So I gave her a call, and then she agreed to meet up in Maine, and we did. And she read the stuff I had, and then she said, I'm on board. And we worked on it for the next 4 years, like way too much. I mean, we worked on it a long time. And being an engineer, I'm really kind of anally retentive. I want to make sure everything's exactly referenced, every data point's correct. And she's very much like that too. She's a very wonderful, honest person. Anyway, so we finished after 4 years and we published. That was it. And I thought, I'm done with this whole topic. I'll sell a couple hundred books, but I did my part. I'm done. And I moved on. That was it. I was done with the whole thing.
Mhm.
But that's how it all got going.
The first publication was 2013, is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah. Um, during that time, during that research, excuse me, like during that first discovery of the chart that shows that measles deaths from measles had already declined by 90% before the introduction of the vaccine, or 95%. You mentioned that you were also a father. Like, how did all this research shape how you chose to parent your kids?
Well, I was going through difficulties with my wife at the time, and things weren't going well for a variety of reasons. And so, I tried to present this information to my wife, who was a nurse, and it just doesn't sit well with her. And now we're actually breaking up. So I don't remember exactly the sequence of events. So I was already kind of out of the house. And so she was already mad at me anyway. So, so, so there's a lot of animosity and, conflict and stuff. So, I didn't have that much say actually in how things went. But so the information, it's a hard pill to swallow. So I don't blame her at all, really.
Yeah.
Especially in retrospect. At the time, I was like really angry, but that's probably a normal reaction. So they got all their vaccines as far as I know. Um,
Yeah.
but so that was unfortunate, but that's what happened.
Yeah. At that time, obviously people go and get, flu vaccines every year, and there's boosters that you can get. Were you doing that stuff yourself? I mean, I don't want to get too personal if you don't want to talk about
You
it,
can
but
you can ask me anything you want. I know I got things when I was younger because I have one of those little vaccine books my mom gave me.
yeah.
So there's like MMR or polio or other garbage in there, right? Not a lot. After that, I never bothered with any of that stuff. I mean, the flu vaccine, as far as I knew at the time, was just targeted for elderly.
Yeah.
It wasn't like everybody should get it, but then it turned into everybody should get it.
Yeah.
But bigger market. So no, I never got any of those kinds of shots.
Yeah.
So I was lucky. I know of doctors who until recently got them every year.
Right.
So, you know, you can only do with what you know.
Sure.
Exactly.
But I had never done that.
Roman, I just want to bounce back a second. You mentioned Gary Null as being sort of a touchstone. In some ways, he was for us as well. I think, Ben, before we started this podcast, 2020 and the world got turned upside down and everyone's sort of scrambling to do whatever research they can. And I was just uh, running errands out in the world and actually listening to the radio and scrolling through looking for a clear channel, which is strange because basically all I do is listen to podcasts, through my own device now. So even listening to the radio seems like a lifetime ago. But I was
Oh
listening
yeah.
to the goddamn radio, and there's this voice uh, talking some real talk about what's going on,
Oh yeah.
about vaccine damage. And this is on the radio. This is on the public airwaves, and my mind was kind of blown. I believe he was airing a interview with Mikey Yeadon. I didn't know either of these names. I didn't know either of these voices, but I went home and I just went into research mode, like trying to figure out what station I was listening to, what program they were airing, who was this person, and I became a devout Gary Null listener for about
Yeah.
a year solid. And I passed it on to Ben. I mean, we were all in on Gary Null. He was a major sort of bright spot to my education in getting into
Oh yeah.
this space.
That's how I got into it. I listened to lots of his programs. Not all
Yeah,
the time, but yeah, I'd go into my car and put it on the radio and listen to it at lunchtime.
yeah.
So yeah, yeah, he's a key figure. I don't think it gets too much recognition, but yeah, without him, I never would have started this.
Here, here. Same
Yeah.
here.
Here, here. Um, so Roman, you've got a presentation with a number of slides, and it sounds like some of these slides are similar to, or maybe the same ones that appear in Dissolving Illusions. And
Yeah,
I know we've got a lot of listeners out there, so we're going to do our best to kind of talk through what we're seeing. But also we'll post this on the YouTube channel and elsewhere. So let's jump into this presentation of yours and talk about why why we really need to address this misconception that vaccines eliminated disease.
sure. Can you see it? I think
I
you
can.
can.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is just my contact. I'm on Substack. I'm on Twitter, X as they call it now, and I'm on Telegram. So if anybody wants this presentation, if you guys want to post it somewhere, I'll share it, right? Um, yeah, so today it's all about fear. It's always about fear, but actually looking at the data and the studies is what we did in Dissolving Illusions, and I do on my Substack, and all these charts they're all free. This is all public information. All the quotes are for, public. Everything's public information. We just put it together into a book.
Hmm.
So here's just a general chart of, again, the United States starts in the year 1900, and this goes up to 1965, right? And so what you see here is we see diseases like typhoid and measles, scarlet fever, whooping cough, and diphtheria. And what you see is the diseases are declining. This is the mortality rate, not the like incidence, but the death rate is declining and declining and declining. And then 1944, we start having mass production of penicillin, streptomycin in 1947. The whooping cough vaccine comes in the late 1940s, and measles way at the end comes in 1963, and there's no scarlet fever vaccine.
Yeah.
And so what you see is most of the decline in mortality rate for all these infectious diseases went towards zero before there was any medical interventions, vaccines and antibiotics. So you basically had a 95, 98% decline in all these mortality rates before we started medical interventions.
Yeah. So what we're seeing is 1900 when these records began being kept. Diphtheria was 40 deaths per 100,000. You have typhoid up around 32. And then the rest of them, measles, scarlet fever, whooping cough down around 10, between 10 and 13 deaths per
Right.
100,000. Yeah.
Right. And you notice typhoid, which we don't vaccinate for that, and scarlet fever, which we don't vaccinate for that.
Yeah.
They're all at zero now without any kind of medical intervention whatsoever.
Right. Right. So the data just clearly shows that this decline cannot be attributed to vaccines, or at least we should. We've got a graph that suggests we should question that narrative, right?
Yeah, I mean, the data is the data. The
The
data is
data's the
pretty
data.
clear that the mortality rate declined massively before there were vaccines.
Yeah,
That's a fact,
that's
right?
a fact.
And this is if you were able to see this chart, there's also all the references that I used to build this.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I always try to keep all the references so that people can go verify that I didn't make it up.
Yeah.
Now I have mentioned England and Wales. This starts in 1838 and ends in 1978. So they started, the only difference with this vaccine chart is they do the DTB vaccine in 1957 and the measles vaccine in 1968.
Hmm.
Um, but what you see here is, massive deaths in the 1800s
Yeah.
from measles, whooping cough, all these types of things. Scarlet fever being the big killer.
Yeah.
It was called the Fell Destroyer because everybody knew somebody who died from scarlet fever. Scarlet fever was the big bad boy. But you see, they're all pretty horrible. And what you'll notice is around 1875, they all start really going down. They're all declining.
Hmm.
And they just basically curve down. And by the time you hit the 1950s and 60s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, they're all pretty much just not much of an issue anymore. They've all declined to near zero.
Yep.
And as a matter of fact, whooping cough was basically down 100% mortality rate, and measles was down 100% too.
Yep.
And scarlet fever went to zero without a vaccine.
Okay.
So they all declined at the same time. You also notice that smallpox, you see smallpox, the gray, which wasn't nearly as bad as whooping cough, and I'm sorry, as scarlet fever, but it's going up and down, up and down. And around 1875, not 1975, 1875, it too starts to decline along with all the other infectious diseases.
Mhm.
And so, this is pretty clear that the vaccines had very little to do, especially DTP and measles, with mortality decline.
Mhm.
So the idea I had before I looked at, listened to Gary Null, looked at the um Miller's book, and did my own research was completely false. The plagues weren't there and solved by vaccines. It just can't be true.
Yeah.
And so what else I'm going to ask a question. So what else do you see? What else does this chart tell you?
Well, the two questions I would ask, just coming from, as a co-host of a show called Terrain Theory, is first of all, what would have actually been causing these incidences? And
Right.
then because you have a sharp decline, what then how were those root causes being addressed, whether intentionally or not? And so on this show, we would say that what causes disease? We ask what causes illness? Lack of nutrition, exposure to environmental toxins, pollutants. Those are the kinds of things
Right.
that cause disease. So you've got bad, poor nutrition, and then industrial revolution, and all the everything that's being poured into water, just clean drinking water alone.
Right.
You've got improvements there.
Boom. Yeah, that's actually the answer. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, if we go deeper into some of these slides, we'll go through all the different things that were going around in the industrial revolution, which is usually portrayed as the wonderful. We developed the steam engine and all these wonderful inventions, which they did, but they don't talk to the dark side of it, which was quite horrible. So when we fixed all those things over many decades, really starting around 1860s, really 1875, there was a big health act to improve public infrastructure and get rid of all these horrible things. And that's why we have this decline, steady decline until by the 1940s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, we had hit peak health as far as all these diseases. So,
Yeah.
yeah, we had solved the problem, but then we forgot that we solved the problem.
So it's and it
Oops.
really comes down to like wastewater, right? Sewage treatment. And
So you had, right. So you
yeah.
had multiple things going on, right? So you had crowded cities. So there was no piped water, none of that. So you just went to the bathroom in your privy in a basically in a bowl, and it went out the window or maybe went somewhere else. Oftentimes that would get into your water supply. So you would be drinking not only your own toilet water, but everybody else's toilet water. And then you would have industries were inside the cities like tanners and et cetera, et cetera. So all that industrial waste would go into your water supply too. So you're drinking from a mass communal toilet, and they try to filter out the big bits, but that's where your water supply came from.
Yeah.
And then you had air pollution because the only thing you had to heat everything was coal. So there was tons of coal in the air, and places like London would have the London fog, which was really just all this soot. So now you're sticking your head in a chimney, breathing in that.
Hmm.
So that, not all the time, but certainly quite frequently. And then there was horrible labor. Your working poor would work 12, 14, 16 hours a day doing the most mind-numbing work, just trying to stay alive.
Hmm.
And there was child labor. So kids as young as 4 years old were in these factories trying to get through the day. And they didn't have school or playtime or anything like that. They worked. And then you had the food supply, which there's no refrigeration. So the food would often get rotten because, that's what would happen. You can't just get some food and just let it sit around. It would get rotten.
Yeah.
And there was very few vegetables and fruits, and everything was, not very good except for the wealthy. The wealthy did pretty well, but everybody else would have all, be subject to that. And then you had crazy medical notions like bleeding people, which was very common for almost everything. They bled the first president of the United States, George Washington, to death. And then they had these horrible toxic medications based on mercury and strychnine and arsenic, which, today we'd be like, well, we're not going to do that. But that was very common too. They used calomel for pretty much everything as well.
Yeah.
And then we had vaccinations, which today we think of it as like this nice hypodermic shot that you take in. It's nice and clean and sterile. And but back then, that's not what it was. They would take a sharp knife called a lancet and make numerous scratches on your arm, like 4 or 5, and then they would take this mixture from somebody else's arm, usually because they had arm-to-arm vaccination for 100 years, and they would take this mixture and like kind of smear it in with the idea that you were going to get sick and that would protect you from smallpox. But of course, if you smear some pus into somebody's arm, we know now you can get sepsis and all sorts of other side effects. We'll call them side effects, but you're basically poisoning somebody. And there were doctors that were calling this blood poisoning back then, and they were right, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you know, it was touted at the time that it was just this kind of vaccine virus, but it was also filled with all sorts of microbes, bacteria, fungus, yeast, and all that kind of stuff going into your arm. So you had all these different things going on at the same time. The result is huge amounts of people dying from these different conditions. And the conditions themselves, if there's a bacteria, as in scarlet fever, aren't that big of a deal. You might get sick, but basically death rates went to zero. So you didn't have to worry about scarlet fever anymore.
Mm.
So we have this perception, which is centuries long, that there is a microbe out there that comes along. You get this microbe into you somehow, you breathe it in or you drink it, and then you could die. But that model is very primitive. It doesn't really explain these charts at all. The charts tell you a different story. The charts tell you that it has to do with the person's health much more than any particular microbe. And that's what these charts tell you, that the microbes don't really matter. I mean, you don't want to get some stuff into your blood supply, or you don't want to breathe like certain bacteria into your lungs. But you could have a problem, but most of the time it's not death defying. We don't have to, based on this data, you don't have to worry about microbes. Any microbes that do exist, just don't worry about it. Just be healthy, and then not only does it solve for scarlet fever, but it solves all the infectious disease problems, and you feel better, and you're healthier for every other conditions like heart disease and diabetes and everything else. So by being healthy, you don't have to worry about specific medical interventions because then you just don't really need medicine in general.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, and we can, I mean, we can continue to go down this line of conversation around terrain versus germ theory. I look at this and go, the picture couldn't be clearer. You can just remove any conversation around microbes completely and just look at environment. This is simply environmental poisoning and malnutrition. It couldn't be
Yeah,
clearer. You put a child, remove them from sunshine, put them in a factory, work them, give them poisoned food, poisoned water, breathing poisoned air. That's it. That's all you
right,
need. And now they are going to be in a diseased state, which is going to manifest in any number of ways.
right.
A rash, a cough, you name it. It's not the
Yeah.
cause of a microbe. It's just they've been poisoned.
Well, I think there's two different extreme positions on germ versus terrain. I kind of fall in the middle that some of these microbes, like Bordetella pertussis for whooping cough, if you get that in your lungs want to clear out this bacteria, right? But if you're healthy, it generally is not a big problem. So whooping cough was not a big issue by the time you got into the 60s, 70s, and 80s. It just wasn't a big deal.
Mm.
Doesn't mean it doesn't like impact you to some extent, but it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
And there were people that recognized that, and they wrote about it in various medical journals. But the idea to protect people from the out there is so powerful, and it's been around for centuries. And people thought things like uh, um, what was I thinking of? Oh, beriberi, pellagra, and scurvy. Those were all viruses. They were all out there. Well, it turned out that it wasn't. It was just nutritional deficiencies.
Mm.
And I think in a broader context, all these diseases are in large measure nutritional lifestyle problems more than anything else, even if there is a microbe. It just doesn't matter that much.
I will say I would argue that it's greater than just lifestyle and nutritional. And the reason I think it's so important to look at charts like this and be reminded of the environment and the causes and the world that existed at that time when these diseases and the mortality from these diseases was at such a high rate is because I don't think that we have, just because these specific diseases may have been reduced, what we see now in this world is an explosion of things like cancer and different diseases. And I don't think that we're out of the weeds. Yeah, we're not in factories, we're not inhaling, the coal,
Sure.
but we've got
Well,
we've got glyphosate, we've got all sorts of
yeah, what
shit that's
we took care, yeah, right. We took care of some problems, so we're not like scratching cow pus and horse
yeah,
pus onto our arms. We're not taking large amounts of calomel. We're not living in a sewer. All these things have been taken care of. A lot of these things have been taken care of. But being humans, we thought of new stupid things to do.
correct.
So now it's like, oh, we got to spray pesticides everywhere since like the 50s and 60s and industrial fertilizers. And we decide, oh, plastic's a great thing. Yeah, sure, it's great. But then the microplastics, you're breathing all that in.
Yeah,
Our food supply is awful because of industrial agriculture. So it's deficient in magnesium. So most people are deficient in magnesium. We don't go out in the sunshine because we think we're smart humans. So we stay indoors all the time. So we're not getting enough vitamin D. So there's essentially a pandemic of vitamin D deficiency.
mm,
So yeah, and then we decide, McDonald's once a year was fine, but now it's McDonald's every day and Dunkin' Donuts and the food that's grown that through industrial agriculture was already nutritionally deficient, then becomes even worse when they put all these different chemicals and they process the food down to like it's just basically I call it foodtainment. It's just to entertain you instead of you're not being nourished.
mm.
And then the medical system comes along. Oh, I got this problem and that problem. Oh, take these medications, and a lot of those strip out more magnesium, and so you end up being just a big nutritionally deficient, obese, person. And then you're kind of stuck in the whole system. I call it the sickness industrial complex. And you're trapped in it because your doctor's telling you you need to take these medications and then there's more medications and it just kind of just goes off the rails and you're kind of trapped in this whole system and yeah, so we fixed problems and we made more problems,
Uh,
unfortunately.
Roman, you're telling me that you don't hit the drive-through for an Egg McMuffin on your way home from the gym every day?
I'm not going to answer that question. No, I used to be a big junk food eater, so all the way through my 30s, right? Well, no, you're not all junk food, right? So I'd go to McDonald's, I'd order pizza, sometimes I'd have salads, and it's kind of like, mainstream kind of eating at the time, right? So, yeah, so I used to do that. I don't touch that stuff anymore. But it was a progression because I had to discover that these things were not in my best interest. So I don't eat any refined carbs. I don't eat any, junk foods. Okay. Well, I'll be honest. Sometimes we go out to a local diner and they have really high quality, kind of foods, but it's still, it's not the best. But most of
No.
the time, it's all just very complex carbs, nuts and seeds and veggies and fruits and all that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and you can make it taste better than McDonald's or Dunkin' Donuts could ever taste. And you don't realize that until you switch. And then it's like, oh, this tastes a lot better. I feel a lot better. I can do a lot of things. I can exercise, which is part of the whole thing of getting healthy. I go out in the sun as much as I can, of course, in New England. So I take some vitamin D3 and K2 supplements over the winter. And I take magnesium because you can't get enough magnesium, even if you eat organic food, unless it's really primo.
Hmm.
So I, try to do all those things and I feel great. I don't go to the doctor. I haven't been to the doctor in 7 years, maybe longer. So,
Roman, what convinced you to go headlong into vegetarian vegan lifestyle?
Gary, no, I'll blame him. It was another thing, like, let me try it. And so I did. And it's never like a linear thing. And I didn't just like quick cold turkey and just do that. And so I just started introducing all these very complex different kinds of carbs, vegetables mostly, right? So, and I felt better. And early on, I was told, well, you're going to lose muscle mass and you're going to be emaciated. I'm like, well, okay. I don't know. I feel pretty good. And I've been doing it for 25 years. And, I go to the gym. I can go to the gym for an hour and a half to, 2, 3 hours. And I got really good muscle mass. I don't have any major health conditions. I'm not perfect, but I feel really good, and so I've stuck with it.
Yeah,
Now, other people have other ideas. That's great, but this is what's worked for me.
I think that's what it consistently comes down to is what works for the individual. Where do you
Yeah,
tend to source your food? Said you live in New England. I'm in upstate New York. Ben's in New Hampshire, so we do have winter climates, and it can be a challenge to have homegrown local food 12 months a
yeah,
year. But so what's your strategy?
yeah. My wife is really great. I just, she's from Australia. She's been here for a couple of years, so she grows a lot of stuff in her tiny little yard. So she grows all these different kinds of greens that I never even thought, to eat. Sweet
Hmm,
potato leaves and amaranth leaves and all sorts of stuff. So I'm getting this really wide range of different phytochemicals.
hmm.
And then we get some things from like Blue Mountain Organics and Eden Foods for like beans and things like that. And look for deals for like coconut oil because I think that's your best fat to use. And so it's just looking around,
Yeah.
go to the various different stores and get this and that from different places and really try to stick with organic because organic not only doesn't have the pesticides on it, but it has more of the micronutrients, more of the minerals. So I really try to get a wide range of different foods in. So it's a rotating complex diet that's always shifting around. I do eat eggs, so I'm not vegan.
Hmm. Love it.
Roman, I don't want to take you away from your presentation. You want to keep going?
We can do anything I want.
Let's go. What do you got? What
Uh,
do you got next?
so if we take all those diseases and put them together into one chart, so this is all combined of the previous chart, you can see back in 1863, deaths were 322 per 100,000. By the time we first came out, mass production of penicillin were down to 7.9 per 100,000. So that's a 97.6% decline in these five diseases. And you can see that it's a nice smooth trend line, basically, if you drew a trend line through that. So most of the work has already been done before they started coming out with these different medical notions, right?
Yeah. I think this is one of the most important pieces of information to get out there because to this day, I will see folks who are strong proponents of vaccines will say because of vaccines, we don't have X, Y, and Z. And it's
Well,
simply
yeah.
not the case.
Well, again, this is mortality rates, and some people argue about the incidence, like in particular in measles, right? And you can make an argument for that if you wish, but to me, if by the 1960s, measles was basically like a cold for most people,
Mm,
and if you just hadn't made sure you had enough vitamin A, vitamin C, I mean, you could reduce mortality rate by 60 to 90% just with vitamin A.
mm.
And then Dr. Klenner in the 1950s was using vitamin C, and he was getting spectacular results with all sorts of conditions, including measles. So, basically, it's just the people who are malnourished more than anything else that would have serious problems with these kind of conditions.
Yeah.
Otherwise, your average person, like they had on the Brady Bunch, was kind of classic. I guess that little video goes around. It's like, oh, you
Yeah.
got measles? Oh, no. Okay, you got to spend a couple days in bed. You don't have to go to school. No
Yeah.
big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, and as we would say, most of these things we call them when we get sick and we don't feel well. Mike and I like to call them upgrades, and we're not alone. You feel that your body is doing what it needs to do, and on the other end, you're going to be a little bit more, a little stronger, a little bit more resilient.
Yeah,
Um,
it's really interesting. I read little tidbits because I read way too much history. You find these little tidbits of this mom who has a child who's always sickly, and then he got smallpox, and then after that he thrived.
mm,
Hmm.
You can take that for what you will, but there's quite a few of these little tidbits of information out there,
hmm.
and it's pretty interesting. And sometimes the same thing with measles too. My kid wasn't doing so well after he had the measles; it got a lot better. So I think your body readjusts and does a lot of magical things. Actually, the body is like it's just like a magical device that we just kind of take for granted because go about our day, but it just does everything for you, and it can adapt to almost anything. It's just amazing.
Yeah, and again, like some of the conversations we have in this space and others sort of in this terrain family point out that the body only has so many different ways to express itself. And if you are in need of a detox, like you're sickly, you might be sickly and you're in need of a detox. The skin is one of those ways that it can push out a toxin. So if you express yourself in that looks like measles, your child who's sickly, all of a sudden you have measles or smallpox, it's sort of acute, and then it's gone, it's out, and now you no longer burdened by whatever toxin might
Yeah,
have been inside you.
right. I think if your body tries to handle it in different ways, and it's usually like your liver and your colon gets rid of all the toxins. If it can't handle it, then it's switches over to the skin.
Yeah.
So that I think that's why you found a lot of people who had measles, for example, back in the 50s and 60s. A lot of times they didn't have anything. They just didn't have any dots or anything really, or a couple of dots and a little fever, and then would go by. It really depended on, what your nutritional state was, whether you could detox it, right? I
Yep.
don't think it certainly wasn't a big deal by the time we hit the 50s and 60s.
Yep. Yeah. All right. So we're looking at Massachusetts.
Yeah, this is just another example, 1861 to 1970. And what's interesting is tuberculosis, it used to be called consumption or
Mm-hmm.
the White Plague. That was the big boy on the field. That was killing people by the boatloads. As you can see here, and basically around 350 per 100,000. And you can see way at the bottom, there's a gray one. That's smallpox, which was much lower than tuberculosis, but you never hear about it because it doesn't have the infamous vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have, typhoid and paratyphoid and diphtheria. Those were big killers too. And then measles was kind of at the bottom, not a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see they're all declining, starting around the 1870s, down, 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 down. Penicillin came in 1944, streptomycin in 1947, which was targeted for tuberculosis. You're already down by 98%. And then the BCG vaccine for tuberculosis as well in 1954, but we don't vaccinate widely for tuberculosis because it's not really a big deal for the most part. And then the vaccine came in 1963 for measles, which was already pretty much flatlined at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So, all these diseases were pretty flatlined. They went away and didn't have to worry about it too much.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So it's
let's,
just another, if you
yeah,
look
go.
at every data set, so you got US, UK, Massachusetts, there's ones in Washington, there's France. I've seen ones in Australia where I don't have the raw data, but all these places tell the same story. In the Western world, as things improved, infectious diseases became non-issues.
Hmm. Yeah. And let's take a little bit of time here and talk about when things improve. Like specifically, what are we talking about?
There was a lot of activists and people that realized that, gee, maybe we shouldn't be living in a giant toilet. This is probably not good. So there was a big push for what they would call sanitation.
Hmm.
So they started bringing in piped water, cleaning water. They started putting in the flush toilet. Then we had the great invention of electricity, which we generally don't think about too much, but that would start to replace coal, right? So slowly that would go away. They started cleaning up the slums. There were hundreds of thousands of people living in wretched conditions near the miserable poor they would call in East London, and people would have to try to stay alive, and women would turn to prostitution and anything to stay alive. This is like in the mid 1800s. So you have hundreds of thousands of people that were living horribly, and they started fixing up all those horrible slums. And the slums were just jam-packed with people. And of course, since there was no sewer systems, all the refuse would go into the basements, and people would live in the basements. And you also had horses going through the streets, and of course, horses actually defecate too. So, so they would drop their stuff in the streets, and that would go intermingled with everything, and people would step in that stuff and drag it into the houses, and there was flies everywhere. It was not a pleasant environment.
Mm.
And then they started putting in labor laws and then child labor laws. So, gee, 4-year-olds can't work in mines anymore. Maybe you have to be at least 7, or now you have to be at least 12. And then maybe now you have to be, 14. So these things changed over time as new ideas came in. Uh, and so that changed. And so you have the sanitation revolution. You have all these great inventions like the flush toilet, electricity, cars came in and replaced the horses. And so you had all these different things come in at the same time.
Yeah.
And schools came in to replace child labor, which people sometimes don't like schools nowadays, but they got some kind of education, how to read and write, and all those types of things, instead of just working in a mine. And there was just greater care. Society just was transformed into something that we maybe don't really realize how wonderful it is. By the 50s, 60s, and 70s, people alive then that were older must have been like, wow, this is like magic. Look at all the magical things we have now. We have cars and we have clean streets and nice place to live. And back in my day, it was awful. So, but again, I think we forgot all that, and I think everything's always been like this,
Yeah.
and we get sucked in by the movies like The Maverick or whatever, where everybody's like beautifully dressed and they have parasols, and yeah, sure, that was some people, but a lot of people didn't live like that.
And in that forgetting of what it used to be like, it's much easier for an industry and the medical industrial complex to spin a story, a narrative that, well, it was the vaccines that
Yeah.
saved us.
Right. Again, the idea that the out there has been around for centuries,
Yeah.
and so this idea to protect you from the outside, which seems reasonable if you're in the 1800s, you think, oh, somebody's on the ship, they're sick, and oh, now somebody else is sick, so you think it's spreading along the ship when really it's just scurvy manifesting. So your teeth start falling out, your limbs turn black, and you die a horrible, miserable, agonizing death. And you think, well, this is a plague, something's spreading around, which in
Mm.
fact it wasn't. So, it's a reasonable conclusion to come to, and we should have learned that that's not really reality.
Hmm.
This is a false narrative. But
Ro-
then, and so vaccination actually was going away by the end of the 1800s because there was a revolution in Leicester, England, that said, "Hey, we're not gonna be forced to get vaccination." They had compulsory vaccination laws in London, and they said, "No, we're not going to do that." They overthrew their local government, and their vaccination rates plummeted. And remember, that's the vaccinations of scratching crap on your arm. And they did just fine, even though the medical system was, doctors are yelling at them. They're all going to die. They're not getting vaccinated, but that never happened. And so vaccination rates in Leicester plummeted, and then slowly over all of England. But this was the time as all these other things were improving, so they didn't have a problem, and smallpox became mild as chickenpox, and it wasn't a problem anymore.
Yeah.
So, Roman, given all this data that you spent, decades
Way
poring
too much
over,
time doing.
way too much time. I mean, you're as steeped in this as anybody. Why the push for vaccines in present times? Is it strictly greed, or do you suspect there's something deeper going on?
I think there's the money aspect to it. By the 19 so Charles Crichton wrote an article, was asked to write an article for Encyclopedia Britannica, and in there he was very critical of the smallpox vaccine. That's the only thing that existed at the time for vaccination, right? And that existed until the 20s. And then they stripped it out and got rid of the vaccination article and replaced it with vaccine therapies and how vaccine therapies were going to fix everything. So although smallpox vaccinations had kind of been discredited by that point and declined, and people weren't really using them, and there was no resurgence of smallpox, like everybody wasn't dying in the streets. But this new idea of all these different therapies became like a cash cow. Well, vaccination itself was a cash cow in the 1800s, basically. But so there was this idea that, gee, these are all going to be great, and they came up with all sorts of crazy vaccines for acne and all sorts of things that eventually just kind of just went away. But there was still this idea that if we can get rid of these diseases, things will be better. So I think there was a lot of well-meaning, people that decided, hey, if we do these things, we'll just get rid of all these diseases. And they said that specifically for measles. So they said in 1963 or 1967, we're going to give somebody a shot of the vaccine, and it's one shot, protects you for life, which isn't true. All these things don't stay around forever. And then by end of 1967, measles will be a thing of the past because we'll just vaccinate just the right number of children and everything, it will just go away. Well, they were wrong. And so then they said, well, one vaccine is not good enough. It's two vaccines, and we got to keep on vaccinating forever and ever and ever. And now it's like, oh, now adults have to get it too. And so it just kind of creeps in, and the profit motive doesn't help. So if you're going to make more and more money, you're more inclined to like promote different vaccines for everything. And now we are today, and there's like mRNA, we need mRNA, we need this, we need that. Nah, I don't think we need any of that because we never did.
So you,
Yes.
so
Oh, go
so
ahead.
greed is kind of the greed and perhaps imposed laziness and miseducation is at the
Yeah,
at the
so
root
I
of it.
mean, this in the 1800, 1700s, they had the idea of inoculation, which was taking pus from somebody's arm that had smallpox and scratching it onto. Edward Jenner changed it to in 1798 to let's take it from a cow. Actually, he thought it was from a horse, or a goat or other animals. And this animal virus would protect you, which he said would be safe and effective back in early 1800s, which wasn't true either. But then it became a fad, and doctors became famous for the inoculations. They became wealthy and famous. And same thing with vaccination. You became quite wealthy because you're doing this idea. And then it was basically put into law by London and other places all across the planet to do compulsory vaccination. So now you are being forced to do it, and you're getting paid money, and it becomes very prestigious. And so all these medical notions became prestigious. And so that's how it got a foothold in, and it's still because it was going on for centuries. It just becomes this thing that you believe is true. And one doctor follows what the other doctor is doing, unless you went and looked, like Charles Crichton and a bunch of other doctors. They would go look and like, well, this is not right. But they were always the minority. So the majority always pushed for something to do. Yeah, well, that's what it comes down to. You got to do something. Yeah, they would give people pills, and one doctor observed, I could give a patient a pill, but I can just give them colored bread, and they do better. So we don't really need to do anything. We need to teach people how to, eat properly and take care of themselves. And there were doctors who recognized that too. It's like, oh, I had a patient come in and he said he went to several doctors and after listening to him said, well, you need to chew your food properly. You're just gulping down your food. And the guy's like, well, I'm not going to pay you for that. I said, hey, look, you go home and do what I tell you to do. And if it works, you come back and you pay me. Well, the guy came back and paid him $1 or whatever it was at the time. So, it's lifestyle problems. These are all lifestyle problems. We don't need all this other stuff going on for the most part. There's always exceptions.
Sure.
But for the most part, it was always about lifestyle, which is your environment and your personal environment and all your personal actions and even your thoughts, right? There
Right.
was a doctor in 1880. What's the guy's name? Forgot the name off the top of my head. Almost got it. Well, it doesn't matter. He was a sanitary inspector for hospitals for 25 years, and he had a team. And they would go into hospitals with scarlet fever and measles and whooping cough and smallpox and all these things. And he and his team never got sick, and the family members of these members never got sick either. And he came to the conclusion that it was fear. Fear, if you were afraid, you couldn't be a sanitary inspector because then you would get sick. If you weren't
Mm.
afraid and you just went about your day and took care of things, then there was not a problem.
Mm.
So there's the psychological aspects as well. So it's not only what you eat, it's also what you think. So you kind of put those all together and no problem, or
What you
generally
think
no problem.
yeah, what you think about what you eat. Do you see us getting out of this mess anytime soon, Roman?
Probably not. Honestly, it's a difficult pill to swallow because of centuries long belief. It's hard.
Yeah.
And people I've talked to people over the years and I show them the chart there, they just kind of look at it like and then they move on. It's hey, I understand. I did the same thing. I looked at it and looked
Yep.
and looked and it was like this can't be true.
Yep.
So it's a hard thing to swallow. And then if you expand it beyond that, to understand that our agricultural system is not good, it makes lots of food, it makes lots of things, but the carrot they're making using industrial agriculture versus the carrot you make for organic is completely different.
Yeah.
It looks the same. It probably tastes a little better organic, but it's not that different. But it's in fact really different. It's not the same thing. And there was actually um, an article written for Congress in the 1930s saying, "Hey, our soil's depleted. The food you're eating now is not the same as it was generations ago." And this is in 1930.
Yeah.
This is before the whole big green revolution and all that stuff. And then on top of that, we have all these, garbage foods. You go to any store, it's like, donuts with color sprinkles and all sorts of, garbage that nobody should ever eat. Well, okay. Well, maybe once a year. But basically, nobody should be eating this stuff. It's not real food. It's, like I said, foodtainment. It's like just to make you have a fun time. But you don't need that. You can have other foods that are delicious and nutritious. It's like it's ridiculous to go and have this whole system. And then again, we have the medical system ready. Oh, you have high cholesterol. Here's a medication. Well, why is your cholesterol high? Well, just take the medication. Oh, you're depressed. Here's an antidepressant. Why are you depressed? Oh, who cares? Oh, you're obese. Here's Ozempic. Here's another scam. You take this to make you lose weight. Well, I could exercise, but I don't want to. I could not eat this garbage, but I don't want to. So, we have a symbiotic relationship between, I want something easy and convenient. And then there's always a scam artist to give you something that you want. And here's a pill, magic pill will fix it. And oftentimes it doesn't. And the person ends up in worse state. And then they end up on another pill, magic pill, to fix their previous magic pill problem. So it just spirals out of control. So the real solution is to have locally organic grown foods as much as possible, local farms, and grow your own stuff as much as you can. And then exercise, get sunshine, fresh water, have a nice day. Don't forget about everything. There you go. That's what makes you healthy, more or less.
Yeah, you heard it here first. Uh, the book Dissolving Illusions and a lot of your research really focuses on the effective side of the argument for vaccines. Vaccinations are effective at preventing these disease outbreaks. Well, no, it looks like there was something else at play. What kind of research and conclusions have you drawn around the safe side of this argument?
I didn't really ever dig deep into that, but certainly, if you look at the history, there's a lot of damage that was done with the DTP vaccine, neurological damage, which was always denied. And there's, of course, polio had the Cutter incident and other incidents where a lot of people were injured and killed. Even today, I talk to people and they'll tell me horrible stories of their children getting something and never being the same. And so there's a lot of that going on. So yeah, there's the dark side is always covered up, right? And in medicine in general, there's plenty of documentation showing that medicine is at least the third leading cause of death anyway, but
Yeah.
we just don't pay attention to that. Um, so yeah, so there's all that information that's out there, but it's generally just basically swept under the rug, unfortunately. It's always pretended to be safe and effective, and things like the DTP was finally acknowledged that it was a problem, but not really. They just said, "Oh, we have this other one, attenuated pertussis, so now we have DTaP," and so they've been promoting that for a long time, but now they realize, like Dr. Cherry, who wrote in I think 108, 116 years of pertussis and pertussis immunization, an article. He acknowledged that the DTaP doesn't really work because of what they call original antigenic sin, which means your body was programmed one way, but then doesn't respond to the actual real world correctly. It misprograms your immune system to respond to Bordetella pertussis.
Mm,
And so you can't respond to that particular bacteria as you would have if you didn't get the DTaP. So now he recommends in this paper, I think it was that paper, that everyone should get the DTaP every 3 years because it loses its effectiveness so quickly. So, I think they promote it now every 10 years or something in some stupid schedule, but they never admit, oh, well, I guess we were wrong that it's safe and effective for your whole life because now you have to get it more often,
mhm.
which of course helps with profits, but no one goes back and saying, hey, you guys said it was just one time, and now I got to get it all the time. I got to get it every 3 years. It's, they always creep it in and then never admit that they actually did anything wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Do you think that there is some hope having someone like RFK Jr. elevated to his position as the health secretary?
Um, I think things might get better.
Mm,
If we just talk about the food supply, for example.
yeah.
If people, because I've listened to a lot of people and they're like, "Oh yeah, he's going to take out red dye number 3, 4, 5, 6." Great, wow, wonderful. Yeah, but the food you're eating is still junk. It's still garbage. It's if you take out of some of these different dyes, okay, great. Now it's 1% better, but you don't need to eat this stuff at all. So you don't need RFK to, fix your food supply. You need to figure out how to eat properly.
Hmm.
He's not going to get you to eat properly and exercise and don't freak out about every news article, right? So, the health is in your hands. It's not in RFK's hands. Now, as far as vaccines, well, okay, maybe things will get better a little bit, but he still believes in safe vaccines. I think he knows about the charts, but that's not something he's focused on. I've asked for the charts to be put up somewhere on the CDC website because I know I have connections, but we'll see if they end up on the CDC website because that will freak people out, right? But I'm not holding my breath that will actually happen. But and not, I don't even want my name attached to the charts. I would just want some kind of chart and make it a different color. I don't care to put it somewhere on the site so people don't have to be so terrified every time somebody coughs somewhere or there's a measles somewhere or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So is it going to change? Maybe there's the public interest, and then there's trillions of dollars here. So I always think that trillions of dollars are going to win. So ultimately,
That's not an optimistic view.
well, no, I don't think it's up to the government to fix this. I think it's up to us to be educated and then take the bull by the horns, and we do it ourselves, which is actually the better way to do it anyway. We don't need top down telling us what to do.
Hmm.
We just have to do what I was talking about. That's my opinion, right? So exercise, eat properly, get plenty of sunshine, have nice friends, and get off of social media all the time. Of course, I'm on social media all the time anyway, but I do go out and do things and have good family connections. All these types of things make us better. And the more people that do that, the less you need the sickness industrial complex. You don't need them. You don't need to have industrial food. You don't need McDonald's. You don't need Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts. And then you're doing better. And if enough people do that, the system will go away slowly. So you don't
Yeah,
have to get rid of red dye number six and all that stuff. If
yeah,
people insist on, I'm just going to have organic carrots or whatever, right? You don't have to worry about that.
yeah.
Well,
I'm with you. Sorry, Mike. I need to get this thought out. When I said that wasn't a very optimistic view, I'm right. It's not a very optimistic view that RFK Jr. or anyone at the top is going to make a change. And I 100% agree with you that it's up to us. It's up to us as individuals. And it's interesting, Roman, having this conversation about empowering the individual and being accountable and agency, lifestyle changes. I almost envision the same way that we have like community gardens now that pop up in
Hmm.
towns where I suspect that most of these community gardens have people overseeing it, making sure that we're not spraying pesticides across the community garden. Like this is maybe organically raised food that gets shared among the community, that you could start having like community health gatherings, almost
Hmm.
like just meetups where people in your community get together to do healthy things, whether it's like group exercise in the park,
Sure.
share some
They
organic food, talk about growing, and then talk about some of the, we can have
they
conversations.
they had that in the 1920s and 30s and earlier, where they would kids go out to the park and they're all doing jumping jacks and then moving around. And yeah, so we don't have to have a society where we're all just like, these little cogs in the government, make sure everything is done right, right? You can do some things locally, community gardens, grow your own food. Me and my wife want to actually get a farm and do something, it's an organic regenerative farm, but we haven't got that far yet. But if we have more and more of that, the other stuff starts to go away. The whole system goes away. Industrial agriculture and GMOs slowly dissipate. McDonald's and Dunkin' Donuts. Sorry if you own a franchise out there, but they slowly go away. And then medical system is not needed as much. Medical was 3 or 4% of GDP in the 50s. Now it's 17 plus percent. It's going up and up and up. One in $5 being spent on your health is insane. There's no reason for it. So if we do all these things, the more people that do it, the more it shifts towards a healthier, happier society.
Mm.
yeah, no, I think there is some nuance involved though, because, especially in a state like New York State, California State, where like they've gotten rid of religious exemptions for shots. You can eat all the organic carrots that you can grow in your yard and feed them to your kids, and
Yeah.
they can even like them, but you still can't send them to school without these required
Yeah, well,
injections.
there's that. Whether that's going to change, that would be great. I mean, I think Whitney Webb said this, a freedom maximalist. So I think you should be able to decide your own fate, your children's own fate. You should be able to opt in. Opt out is ridiculous. That's fascist. It's like,
Right,
oh,
right,
I don't want to do that. Oh, can you give me some documentation why? Oh, no, I don't like that. No, that documentation doesn't count because we don't do religion anymore.
right.
But that's ridiculous. You should say, I made a decision. I want to go get a vaccine. Okay.
Yeah,
That might be maybe that's the best solution for you. Okay. Who am I to judge? But
correct.
no one should be told what to do. And I'm not telling people you have to eat organic food and you have to exercise. If you don't want to, okay, that's fine. You can go drink alcohol all day long, which I used to do. I was a big drinker, by the way.
Hmm.
You can eat junk food all day. You can smoke cigarettes and do whatever and, get obese. That's your own personal choice. Fine. I suggest that if you do the other, you're going to feel a hell of a lot better and you're going to do better and you won't need all these medications and all that stuff because you're going to be a healthier person.
Mm.
I suggest that's a better way to go. But if you don't want to, don't. And then certainly the government shouldn't be telling us what to do because, well, they're all corrupt first and they all have a profit motive, which is part of the corruption, right? So it's up to us to just do it locally as much as we can. And then, you know, be great if they got rid of these stupid mandates for all sorts of, stupid things. Who are they to mandate these things just because it has the magic word vaccine on it? It's
Mhm.
a magic word for most people. Oh, a vaccine? Oh yeah, I'll get one. What's a vaccine for? I don't care. It protects me from something.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But it's really just kind of a lunacy.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And in trying to have these conversations with people, I often use that terminology opt in and opt out, but I appreciate the framing of opt out is fascist because by default you are having to opt in, and that removes choice from the get-go.
Right. Everyone should have a choice to, decide their own fate. As long as you're not hurting some other individual.
Right.
Like I have a right to have a knife, but it's not, I can't stab it in your eye. That would be bad. So we don't really, it's just as long as you're living your life the best you can, making decisions. And I've changed my mind over the years about lots of stuff.
Yeah.
And, to think these people that, are supposed to be our leaders know everything. They don't. They're just as dumb as I am. So, or dumber. And they all have their own, pockets to line. So why should we listen to these people?
Here, here.
Yeah, it's the as long as you're not harming another person where things get tricky as you're talking about vaccines, because those who are again proponents of it say if you opt out, if you decide not to, you are harming those around you because you
Right.
become the disease vector. And that's the importance of that's why these charts are so important.
Right. And then you go back to the charts and measles and with the Brady Bunch was not a big deal
Yeah.
because that it wasn't a big deal. And I had this argument with a couple of different doctors. Yeah, I don't want to say too much about it, but anyway, there's this argument still that yeah, we still need them because we don't want to spread diseases around. And I argue, and doctors have argued this throughout the decades that it's there's something wrong with somebody's nutritional profile, but they don't want to criticize people for being not well nourished
Mm.
because they're doing their best. Now you're criticizing the parent. I'm like, we got to reframe this to make people healthy, not keep on going down this route that we need to protect them from the out there. We
Hmm.
need to make them better, empower them. It's about self-empowerment. Eat right, have a nice day, play some music, whatever you want to do. Do something constructive with your time, you know, and live a life, not live your life like based on, I'm going to get a disease, I'm going to get a disease. That's not going to end well.
Yeah.
So,
I've brought this up on many shows, but in doing this podcast, and I have a feeling you've probably arrived at the same conclusion that health seems to be the most controversial of all topics. And it's because as soon as you bring up someone's lifestyle, it's like it's a place that society isn't comfortable going because there's too much judgment and guilt wrapped up in it.
well, that's
And
true too, because, I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
No, I mean, you can't say somebody's out of shape because then, they're fat shaming or whatever. And again, I don't really care. I mean, you could be a wonderful person. You probably are a wonderful person if you're overweight, but it's not in your best interest. It's not going to end well. You're going to have all sorts of problems. Why not address the issue? And if you don't want to, that's fine too. But and so it's no reflection on anybody's, person, what your personality is. You probably have gone, and I know people have suffered a lot of some kind of a historical abuse in their families, and they turn to food as a comfort, and it's also used as a reward. So you get caught in this whole cycle of, eat to make yourself feel better,
Yeah.
or eat yourself to reward. So you're not a bad person, and so I don't see why it's such a big deal. But people do freak out about it, so you can't say anything. But I think we should reframe it. Why don't we could have a healthy society where people, run over to their farm and work on things and, do this and that, the other thing, and are vibrant and having a
As a
great
reward.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And instead it's like, I'm going to go to Dunkin' Donuts, get, 3 dozen crullers, and eat them all in one sitting. I know people who eat whole cakes for dessert. I mean, it's not a great idea, but, that's what they do. And so we have this emotional damage and the physical damage, and then we get hooked on these drugs and, end up a disaster. And I think that's where we need to address it. And if RFK could do anything, just start pointing these things out. I think that would be the most important. I would like to have a limited um, Department of Health. I mean, real health, not the fake health, and talk about these things with the idea that the department will not exist forever. It will exist for a few years, help people guide them, and then it goes away. But of course, that probably won't happen. And then interest will come in and corrupt the whole thing anyway. So,
Yeah, I agree. I don't care about policy, just educate people.
well, that's it. Here's the information about vitamin D levels and magnesium levels. If people even knew they were deficient in vitamin D and magnesium, they probably might do something about it, or maybe they wouldn't. And things would just get better. As people get healthier and we have tighter, good. I always think about the Amish.
Yeah.
I've never been there, but it's kind of Amish with some technology would, I think, be more optimal as opposed to what we have now, which is not so good.
So
And
just
then that would help with our entire budget, right? Because we spend huge amounts of money. People are getting bankrupted. The government's bankrupted because of spending money on Medicaid and Medicare, and then people are getting bankrupted by spending huge amounts of money on all this, medications and stuff. So if they were healthier, all that stuff would slowly go away, and then we'd have a healthier, more vibrant society, and not spending all the money on this crap. And then if you get rid of wars too, that would be nice too. It's just no more,
let's
no
just
more
do it all.
wars. Yeah, just get rid of that too. So you take out the military industrial complex. So,
Yeah, you're on a roll,
but
Roman. You're on a roll. If I believed in elections, I would say elect you.
oh
I
God, no. Oh
I
no, no, no. I'm not a politician. I don't. I'm not really good lying. So I'm not.
I I do love that. I do love that idea, Mike. We gotta have a new T-shirt that says "Be more Amish."
Yeah, I only know about Amish from like a high level point of view. I've always just, I thought about going there and, spending some time there, but I haven't done it.
Yeah,
But back to the simple, simple things, good community, grow your food. Somebody needs some help. Oh, you want to raise a barn? Let's go over there. We'll raise the barn, and you take care of yourself, and you don't have to worry about, everybody else on the whole country. Oh, he's not vaccinated. Who
yeah,
cares?
yeah,
It's none of your business.
yeah. They've
Just
nailed.
take care of things.
Yeah, they've nailed the basics. Roman, since Dissolving Illusions has come out, like how was it received when it first came out? How has it been received since then? Like any surprises along that way?
Um, well, when it first came out, I just forgot about it. And Suzanne went on some speaking stuff and whatnot, so she was more, promoting it. And it's been kind of slow and steady, and it's just been just slow and steady ever since. And then COVID came out, and I was
Hmm.
like, good grief, leave me alone. But I was like, I thought COVID was going to go away in a week, but of course it didn't. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, good grief. And I so I decided, well, maybe we should write a 10th anniversary edition. Originally I was going to put COVID in there, but then it really wasn't history yet, so I decided not to. We decided not to do that. And so then, that the new book's out, and I had this huge timeline and all sorts of doctor's quotes that didn't fit in the original book, and I cleaned that all up and made a companion book too that has all this, these different fully referenced quotes from doctors and timelines and all sorts of interesting documents and stuff like that. I'll put into that book too, and that's been doing quite well. And I think that's a nice addition. So it's all been slow and steady, and it's spread around like a virus, apparently. So I figure we're kind of like a virus. And so, it's been quite successful. Surprise to me, it's sold hundreds of thousands of copies. It's in seven languages: German, French. Oh, there's one. Yeah. So yeah, I got the new one here. Is that the one you had, or is that you have the original?
I got the
It
original.
looks like I got
Yeah,
the
yeah.
original too.
Yeah.
Wow, cool, man.
Oh, we
Yeah.
got
Um, yeah, the new one has like 150 new pages. Talks about the White Plague and more on smallpox and all that stuff. So,
Okay.
but yeah, honestly, you don't need all that stuff to understand. You just need the charts, which you can find on my Substack or on dissolvingillusions.com. Look at the charts, think about the charts, and go, oh, okay, move on.
Yeah. Yeah, well, okay. So the book came out in 2013. You've got this 10th anniversary edition. You mentioned when the book came out, you just sort of forgot about it. You clearly haven't forgotten about this topic because you're pretty active on Substack. You're really
Uh,
continue to dig into this.
yeah, I kind of am not so interested in the topic anymore, but then something happens like measles in Texas. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. I have the charts, and so yeah, I get back into it.
Yeah.
I'm also interested in the environment. I wrote an environmental book, which I'm updating, and now I'm working on a novel. It's a fictional novel based on real events that occurred in Victorian England, and it will, well, I don't want to say how it ends, but so it talks about all the things that were going around back then, and it's not all just, top hats and parasols, but I think I'm having a lot of fun doing it because it's just more fun instead of just references everywhere.
Mm.
Right.
So even though there will be references at the end of the books, kind of just if you want to do more reading about particular um, things that I talk about in the book as a fiction. So I'm working on that.
That sounds great. What's your environmental book?
Um, yeah, I'm updating it because I rushed it. So this is the book Moving Back from Midnight. So it talks about all these environmental issues like plastics in the ocean, species extinction, collapsing rainforests, um, overfishing to the point that our fish stocks will probably collapse, and all of these types of things. Um, Consumerism, which ties back into, how do we get healthier by not consuming so much, junk, 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 junk. So all these different types of issues I'll put into one book because I didn't see anybody doing that. They
Hmm.
all talk about like certain like different topics, but I just wanted to put it all in one book. So I'm
This
I'm
might be
updating
a
that.
a separate conversation, but do you want to weigh in on the whole climate controversy?
Yeah, people have different opinions about that. Through 5 years of reading, I saw that sea surface temperatures have increased, glaciers are retreating, and what's all the cause of that? Well, some say it's carbon, some say it's not, but something's going on. So glaciers are retreating, and sooner or later, glaciers across the planet, if they're gone, our river systems are going to be screwed up. So, what's causing that? I think it's probably too much carbon in the atmosphere, but other people have other ideas, but I'm not positive about all that, of course. But we still have a problem. So we have all these problems. What are we going to do about them? There's too much momentum in the system to stop all the glaciers from retreating. So what are we going to do with our water supplies? What are we going to do with the fish being overfished? What are we going to do with all this plastic we keep on injecting into the environment? All
Mm.
the toxins we keep on putting in the environment. We keep on doing these things thinking that, oh, it'll be fine. Don't worry. It'll be fine. Just keep on doing them until it's not fine anymore. And if the Amazon rainforest, which does collapse, which is trending towards, that's going to be a massive change on the planet. It's not a good idea. There's a lot of things we're doing that are not good ideas. So, I think we need to course correct on lots of things. It's not just climate.
Mm.
Agreed.
Yeah, Roman, would you be willing to come back on a future date and dive into your book and some of your findings?
Yeah, I think what we're doing to the planet is much more important than any microbes, that we get all afraid about. We
Yeah.
don't we should focus on our personal health, which I think would also impact the environment because we're doing things locally and we don't need to transport it all over the place. And so things would be better that way too. And actually, I think local communities raising organic food and being together is really most of the solving a lot of these problems.
Mm.
It's um it's a step towards decentralization, and I
Oh
guess
yeah.
you could frame that as an anti-globalist philosophy, which does solve a lot of our problems, I would argue.
Oh, I don't know. I like Carl Schwab. Is it Carl Schwab? Whatever his name
You
is.
don't even know his name.
Schwab guy. He, he he's my hero.
Yeah,
Um,
Carl's his second cousin.
Whatever. What's his name? What was his name? I
Klaus,
forgot.
Klaus.
Klaus, Clark, Carl, and Fred Schwab, whatever. Yeah, no, I mean, free trade is great because, you can get products from all over the place, but it has an impact, and we just don't ever consider the impact. We always think about it as GDP
Yeah.
but I think free trade's probably better than trying to do something else because we have things all over the planet, but then again, getting it all over the planet is probably not the best idea. We probably want to have it more locally. Now, there's certain things you're not going to produce locally, but certainly your foods and a lot of things could be done locally. We don't need to outsource it just so we can squeeze out a penny, for profit. And there's still slave labor all over the planet. And I talk about that in the environmental book. So there's slave fishermen that go out on the water in Thailand, and they're out there for 10 years at a time. They have no choices.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's still slavery for clothing. There's slaves all over the planet. I think if you go, I forget the name of the website, but there's like at least 7 million slaves around the planet doing all sorts of, things against their will. And, so that's part of globalism too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's ugly. Roman, in addition to writing two books, working on a novel, updating your Substack, you have also penned some song lyrics.
Oh yeah. So, I've been writing some poems, and a friend of mine said, "Hey, you should sing." I'm like, I don't want to sing. I don't think my voice is that good, but anyway, then I thought about it. It's like, well, I should change his poems into a lyric. So I did that, and then I gave it to her, and she gave it to this guy just because she did, and he made it into an AI version of the audio
Yeah.
of the lyrics. And then I took that because it was really like, it sounds real to me. And I've been trying to get real people to sing it because I don't really want to use AI, but it still came out really good. And then I created a music video from it. So, and it's a very positive one. It's about taking care of your own health, and don't listen to the big guys. Just do your own health stuff, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd love to share it if we could.
Yeah, let's do it. And actually, this is what brought us together. Mike Wallach, who has been on the show, reached out in an email introing you to us and mentioned that you had done this song, and he was aware that Mikey's a musician and has a festival, and we sometimes air tunes on this. And I had to listen. I was blown away that first. I mean, I think the lyrics are awesome, and they're speaking to everything that we talked about here today, and then also broadly on on this podcast. And then the fact that this music is AI.
Yeah.
We've never featured a song written by not written, but music done by
Yeah.
AI.
Again, I'm not a big proponent for AI for everything, and I really like to have somebody really sing it
Yeah,
and a real band and really promote the concepts in it, right? I
yeah.
have a couple of those songs I'm working on too, but this is the first one, so
All right, let's hear
here,
it.
let's let it rip.
Hey, don't you know your health's your own? Don't need no big pharma or government throne. For too long, they've told us what to do, but the fact is the power's all in you. So let's take control. It's time to decide. A life of wellness starts from inside. Health's not a pill, not a shot, not a scheme. It's the food you eat, it's the way you dream. Move your body, soak up that sun. Drink clean water and the race is won. Build your life on love and rest. True wellness means you're living your best. Nourishing food and a good night's sleep. Meaningful bonds that run oh so deep. Take a walk in the woods, let nature call. Learn something new, rise after you fall. Leave behind those harmful ways. Junk food, booze, drugs steal your days. Health's not a pill, not a shot, not a scheme. It's the food you eat, it's a chore. Health's not a pill, not a shot, not a scheme. It's the food you eat, it's the way you dream. Move your body, soak up that sun. Drink clean water and the race is won. Choose each day, let your heart invest. True wellness means you're living your best. Oh yeah, true wellness is the way. Make the choice and start today. Health starts now and is every day. Health starts now and is every day.
That's remarkable.
That was a lot of fun to do, I'll tell you. It took me like 5 hours to get the clips. I think it was from Pexels.
Yeah,
They're all free clips,
yeah,
and you can tip the people who give you the clips and stuff like that. So,
yeah.
but so they're all open source, I guess,
You
free to use.
nailed you nailed the video clips. You nailed it, and some of your transitions were perfectly
That's why I
synced to the music.
that's why I spent 5 hours on it.
Yeah, yeah.
I
That's
Okay,
didn't
not
think
that
I,
bad. I mean, I'm a musician. People spend weeks and months on videos.
yeah. It just came to me, and then of course I had to stick in, our savior Fauci and
Fauci.
Walensky and all these other people. Of
Yeah.
course I put them under the schemes section, but
Michael, you are a professional musician. You've got to weigh in on this AI performance here.
I almost want to just abstain from the conversation.
yeah,
I
I
don't know.
actually
I don't know what to say. I'm kind of
I
speechless.
know nobody produced it. Real people, because the guy sent it back to me like in a couple days. So I know it's AI. I can't believe it even.
Yeah.
So it's pretty amazing.
It's kind of creepy. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, I'd rather have real people do it and a real person like this Ilya or whatever his name is. She's kind of made the rounds. She came out of the song um, that somebody to sing it and promote it. Saying and this is a positive message. I don't even care about the credit. I
Yeah.
don't care about that. A
Yeah.
positive message as opposed to the negative stuff we always get bombarded with. Go out and have a nice day and exercise and eat right and
Yeah.
all that, and then you're going to be great.
You're
Let's do
No.
good.
that.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Make yourself great again.
And
If
make
I want
yourself
to, well, if I wanted to steal something from a
MIGA.
certain somebody, yeah,
MIGA.
my God, it's better than MAGA.
No,
Make
I love
yourself
that.
great again.
Yeah, responsibility is a gift, right? It's responsibility is
Yeah,
a
it's
gift.
it's a gift, not a chore, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because it's like, oh, I don't want to do that. It's too much trouble. Well, then don't do it. But it's really a gift.
Yeah, I
You've been
get to
given
do that.
this gift of this amazing body that does all sorts of wonderful things for you. Try not to abuse it.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Well, Roman, speaking of amazing bodies, let's bring it around to you and yours. This is the question.
I
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah. I love
Are you
that look
hitting?
on your face.
Are you hitting at me? I'm a little embarrassed.
Sometimes I struggle to segue into this question, and that was such an example. So, um, awkwardness aside, Roman, this is the question we ask all our guests at the end of each episode. What are your non?
No, I won't go out there.
You answered that before we hit record. All right, I get it. No, two no's
I
is all
know.
I two no's is all I need. Okay.
Okay, all right.
What are your non-negotiables, the daily habits you do to tend to your terrain?
Yeah, so I try to sleep well. Sometimes you don't because my mind gets too busy, but I try to tame that. I get up and I drink like 2 to 3 pots of green tea or other kinds of teas throughout the day. I only eat usually 1 or 2 meals a day, usually two. I exercise pretty much every day. I always try to have some, positive time. So always laughing about things. Don't take life too seriously. I don't watch television. I used to, but I don't watch television anymore. And I try to do constructive work. I try to help other people, try to help family members. So all those types of things. Mostly I cook at home with, a wide variety of different foods and stay away from the medical system pretty much most of the time. Yeah, that's pretty much about it. Have a nice day.
Sounds like common sense. Roman, in addition to your book, obviously, what are some of your go-to book recommendations for the listener who wants to learn more about some of what we talked about today?
Um, I don't actually read too much um, kind of current stuff. I actually picked up Whitney Webb's books recently, so I'm just reading through those because she has recall that I envy. She's
Yeah,
just it's just
she's
crazy.
a
She remembers
force.
everything. She's a force out there, so
Yeah.
I'm really impressed. So I don't really read current books at all. I didn't read like RFK's book on Fauci or anything like that. So I tend to read 1800s books and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I guess I don't really recommend too many current books at all.
Yeah, what about like, maybe some other Substacks where you get some information or other folks out there?
Um, I listen to a wide variety of different people, but basically I just don't really pay attention to what other people are generally doing. Um, I kind of listen to different people on and off all the time, even some local people and stuff like that. So most of the time I'm really busy. I've been working, I usually work about 7 days a week, and I'm working on my novel currently because I'm having fun with it. So I spend most of my time when I'm not, if I'm on the computer, I'm usually doing something like that. So
Hmm.
Do you still check in with Gary Null now and again?
actually, I have not. So I don't know how that's going. I guess he's still in New York doing stuff. So he deserves a lot of credit, like tremendous amount of credit, and so does Neil Miller. These are people maybe that have not gotten enough credit for what they've done.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Where can the listener learn more about you and your work?
you can go to my Substack. You can go to dissolvingillusions.com. We're, updating the website a little bit. We created a separate bookstore. So if you don't like Amazon, we got a local printer in the US, and we have another place that's US and UK. Still trying to finish up the Kindle, and the new audiobook's available on this new store too. It's not through Audible at the moment, but you can still listen to the book. So I had the whole thing done. I did all the quotes at the beginning of each chapter using AI because I thought it was cool, but the rest of it's me. So that took a long time. So that might be of interest for anybody who wants to listen to it, as
Yeah.
opposed to reading the whole darn thing. So yeah, so Substack, X, Twitter, whatever, and Telegram.
Okay. We'll put the link in the show notes. Roman, thank you for joining us on the Terrain Theory podcast.
Thanks. It's been fun.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the after party in the Pineal Room. Brother Mike, how are we?
Hello, Ben. I'm great. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great. That was a lot of fun.
It was sort of a long time coming. He's somewhat of a legend.
He is, yeah. Like I said to him, and as you know, Dissolving Illusions was one of those early books that brought us into this space in this conversation.
Yeah. Have you read it cover to cover?
I have read it cover to cover. I was just looking through all the folded over corner pages
Yep.
where I wanted to remind myself to come back to this,
Nice.
that, or the other thing. But seeing is believing. I know that there's a lot of folks out there who are just listening, but it might be worthwhile to pop over to YouTube to see some of the charts, or I would just encourage you to go and buy the book so you can see the graphs yourself. But a lot of these graphs have made the rounds in this era of social media. Seeing is believing. People like to throw these graphs out there, so I tend to come across them regularly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I wonder if they're getting to new eyeballs or just people.
same old, same old.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
Because they are pretty convincing.
they are. There's a lot of preaching to choirs out there, isn't there?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know you don't want to talk about it, but I'm going to make you talk about it, and that would be the AI musical performance.
Yeah, I'm sort of somewhat in denial about it.
I am not going to allow you to sit there in denial because I feel like
It's not healthy.
denial is close to delusion, and delusion will make you sick.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it was kind of chilling. I
What?
think I've
What
only
aspect of
really,
it?
because I've not sought any of that sort of quote unquote content out, apart from like something that comes through an Instagram feed or whatever. Um, it was almost like hearing something like that for the first time. Like,
Okay.
or I've heard maybe some parodies done by AI, but not something that's like, I wrote these words. We're gonna have the computer create a polished recording with the lead singer. I hadn't heard like from soup to nuts, as they say. So it's absolutely uh, shocking. It's sort of shocking that it can do that.
And like critique the song, grade it.
Uh, well, I mean, it's beautiful. The recording is polished and pro, and like the singing is quote unquote nuanced and great. It's great. It's a little on the nose lyrically for like my type of aesthetic, but
Yeah.
frankly, songs like that I think do reach a broader audience when they're a little bit more on the nose and
And
general.
so when I read the lyrics, that's first what happened. So Mike Wallach reached out via email, and I can't remember if he included the lyrics or if Roman jumped right in and said that he had written these lyrics. And I read the lyrics, and reading them, I agreed. I was like, oh, okay, this is great. The messaging is right on, right on. It is a little on the nose. I'd be very interested to see how this sounds in a song, and I felt that this performance is like the way that you would sing this song, because it's
Yeah,
kind of like poppy, a little country twang
correct.
by a woman who's sort of singing it with a little bit of like a country twang. I was like, this is actually the only way that I think you would perform this song, and it really worked.
Correct. Yeah, and that often happens. You'll see lyrics divorced from the music, and you'll be like, "Eh." But then when you hear it married to the music, that's the magic, and it sort
Yeah.
of transcends whatever your preconceived expectations were.
Yeah, like I've been listening to quite a bit of Metallica with Grayson.
Yeah.
Because I joked with him, I was like, I think a song came on. I don't even know what it was. Enter Sandman. I put on Enter Sandman, and he likes to now like find those notes on the guitar. And I joked with him. I was like, yeah, your Uncle Nate like got into Metallica, and he used to get up in the morning on a school day, and he would just blast Metallica. Like, this is after Josh had died. Nate's in
Yeah.
that room and has Josh's like stereo system,
Damn.
and I'm like slow to wake up, and then the next thing you know, like he's just blasting like Ride the Lightning or something, and I was not into it. Like, we were playing ska. It was like opposite ends of the spectrum,
Sure.
and I freaking hated it.
Well, did you just hate it because it was first thing in the morning?
It was first thing in the morning. Yes, it was first thing in the morning, and also it's just, again, it was the opposite of what we were listening to at the time, which was like this bouncy, cheery ska.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
he's
yeah,
got
yeah.
this like dark, fast.
Yeah.
But as I grew older, like I really grew to appreciate a lot of Metallica tunes, and it's been a lot of fun diving back into it. All that to say, been putting it on for Grayson, and I always put the lyrics on the phone so he can like read the lyrics, and did the same sort of thing, like kind of divorced the
Yeah.
music
Yeah.
from the words, and I was like,
Yeah.
this is not saying anything. Like, these are actually pretty kind of dumb, but sung the way he sings it, James sings it, and in that, it's just like it all works.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you can make the argument that the words are kind of just a vehicle to emote,
Yes.
right? And
Thank you.
to build a world around,
Yeah.
at all. It's funny. What ruined Metallica for me was that documentary, Some Kind of Monster. Did you see that one?
I did.
And I was just like, these guys, because the mythology just was popped like a balloon right in front of my eyes. Like, they're just kind of rich crybabies. They're not like tough guys on stage. They're like wearing shorts, and they're in the sun, and they're whining about the bad Chinese food. And it's like there's nothing like hardcore about these guys, but their
Yeah.
whole thing, their whole point in life to me was to be hardcore about everything,
Yeah.
music and beyond. And I was like, you are just whiny rich guys.
Just whiny rich guys. What excuse me, what got me into, finally, as a like 20 something, what got me into Metallica was seeing the documentary on the making of the Black Album.
Okay.
I don't know if you've seen that.
No. See, I saw the wrong documentary.
So if you watch, I would encourage you to go back and watch it, because like well, for you it's kind of old hat, right, being in a studio and like playing around, but I felt like they were breaking a lot of ground in the recording of that album, and certainly for them it was like a departure for them.
Yeah.
And I found it so fascinating, and I just gained a lot of respect for for them as musicians, them as like artists, and them taking certain chances, and also just pioneering. And the way just that they captured the kick drum, Lars's kick drum alone, just that,
Yeah.
like how they positioned the microphones and like how much time and attention went into that one thing alone,
Yeah.
kind of blew me away. And then,
Yeah.
you know, that album sort of stands alone, and it's got all the songs on it that you remember and you
Yeah.
sing
Well,
along
that's
to.
kind of them at their pinnacle for sure.
That was, but that one made me like just go, okay, you know what, I can get behind them to an extent.
Well, who needs to spend time getting a kick drum sound now? We have AI to do that.
We have AI. You could just tell AI.
Well, that's what's so
like,
fucked up. It's so
I know.
fucked up. It's
Yeah.
crazy. And is it? I don't even know if it's a bad thing, honestly. That's why I'm not ready to process this information yet.
Yeah, I'm really pushing you, aren't I? I'm pushing you to like confront it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but you know what, Mike? Like, no one, you can't. AI is not going to perform. You're not going to get real people. You're not going to get AI at the hoot, right?
No.
You can't. You have to have real people performing this. I mean, that is music as it's supposed to be consumed, is in person, experienced. In person, experiencing music in a concert is how it's supposed to go down.
Yeah.
AI is never going to replace that.
Correct.
Yeah. Although I'll tell you, if someone had sent me this song and didn't tell me it was AI, I wouldn't have
You'd have
immediately.
no idea.
I don't think even by the end of the song, I would have gone, wait a minute. Is this AI? I don't even know. There's nothing in it that stands out to me as being unattainable by a human.
Well, this stuff has in a way happened by degrees, because if someone had sent me that song cold and I listened to it, I'd be like, that's a drum machine, that's a MIDI guitar. Like, I would recognize the
Yeah.
elements as being artificial, but like, that's still AI. Like, it's not like AI just happened last week. You know what I mean?
It's true.
It's like we've been using drum machines and synthesizers since the 70s and 80s. You could argue that in a sense that's AI. It's just it's artificial. It's the A part
It's the A
of
part.
AI. Yeah, that's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
I guess the I part is more now, because it's able to take all those variables and seam them together in a polished project. It's crazy. It's really crazy. Yeah.
It is crazy. I wonder, well, first of all, I'm going to have to reach back out. I'd love to know what program was used, what specific AI program was used for that. I'm not familiar of any that spit out polished songs. It would be really fun for me, not for you, to guide that AI program to spit out a Mike and Ruthie song. Like, just give it lyrics and say, in the style of Mike and Ruthie, and see what it does.
Yeah, I know, it's funny
because it's got to have access to.
It's crossed my mind. It has crossed my mind. It's just a place I don't want to go.
I know. I can't. Well, I can't blame you, because
I don't even like to use a computer to write songs. I'm still using pen and paper. Like, that's what I'm committed to my analog process.
You got a paper calendar.
I got a paper calendar. I got a spiral bound notebook. I got a pen and a pencil.
Yeah.
That's I feel secure with my elements.
Yeah, no, God bless
you. But if you want to do it, Ben, go nuts.
I don't think I do. I don't. I will never. I don't think I'll ever do that, because I'm not going to enjoy that on my own, and I'm sure as shit never going to send it to you.
So what's the point?
So what is the point?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I could be like, no, Mike, the new Mammals album sounds pretty good, but I actually have an alternative Mammals album I just want the band to consider.
Holy shit. That would be a crazy A-B if you have a new album that's like finished, right? And you've got it done, so it's not going to affect, you're not going to change your mind. It just is what it is. But then before it comes out, you take all the lyrics and even some of the stylistic notes, you feed that to AI, and then you have an A-B to compare and contrast. It'd be crazy.
Send me the lyrics to the upcoming Mammals.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Well, back to Roman really quick.
Yeah, back to Roman. He's like what a dry sense of humor. What a guy.
I know. He what I loved about him is that ultimately his message is so similar to what, so many of us in the space are trying to say, and that is just empowerment.
That's just like common sense.
Yeah, common sense. And it's interesting, like we've lost the ability to hear the truth And so we are taking action to prevent people from speaking truth. Like this idea that you can't address a person's lifestyle, you
Yeah.
can't address a person's diet because it could be offensive or it could shame them.
Yeah.
So therefore we don't do it. And now we're at a point where it's like you almost can't do it because there could be real world consequences. And as a result, we're all just sicker, fatter, unhealthier, and less version of ourselves.
Yeah, it's the thing you're not allowed to talk about is where the corruption seeps in the deepest, and that's at a societal level now, and that plays into the whole like trope that if you're aspiring to be healthy, you're a right winger, which is fucking insane. But that's kind of the end conclusion of that sort of dialectic.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you address it?
Yeah,
Where do we go from here?
I think you just have no choice but to keep doing what we're doing, which is to speak freely as much as possible. Yeah.
Do you ever find yourself in a situation where you've got someone who might be lamenting their health issues, and you just, well, you're eating McDonald's, you aren't exercising. Like, do you speak plain truth to people in those instances?
I usually try to find a less direct way of bringing those things up, but yes, I'll generally make an effort to provide some additional information if that comes up.
I think the key is just the same thing that the good doctors out there do, and that is just to ask questions. What are you eating? Oh, you don't feel good. What are you eating?
Yeah.
How much exercise are you getting? I'm like, they'll just, by in answering, they're going to come to the realization, or they won't.
Yeah. 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 I don't know. This is kind of an aside, but it was a cute story my brother shared with me about RFK and the red dyes, and apparently my nephew really loves like spicy Cheetos, as a lot of kids do. My kid was obsessed with Takis for a long time, and like, we know how riddled with just garbage is in those ingredients, just the worst of the worst. And but my brother was trying to explain to his little one how RFK was trying to get the red dye out of things like Cheetos, and Angelo just like, as he explained it, just had a total party. He's like, guys, he went to told all his schoolmates, guys, they're gonna fix the Cheetos. which to Roman's point, like, we probably shouldn't be eating Cheetos anyway. But I do love that moment and getting through to the little kids that there's stuff in there you shouldn't be eating, and there's people working on getting it out. And baby, we're gonna fix the Cheetos for you, man. We're working on it. It's really, it's just amazing. It's amazing. Like I said, probably shouldn't be eating Cheetos anyway, but I love that story.
Also, baby steps, and every little bit. I don't think. Yeah, I mean, should we have policies? Should we be passing laws to keep this stuff out of the food supply? Like, I guess that can't hurt, right?
It's the Daniel Quinn thing. It's reeds in the river as opposed to just a different. What does he call it? River of vision. That we need a whole new river of vision. We're just putting obstacles in it to slow down the flow.
Yeah. No. Correct. I think I would rather the energy, attention, even money just be put towards education and awareness, and not like policy and laws.
Yeah, I love what he said about opting in versus opting out, and that having to opt out is fascist, whereas you should be free to opt in all day long.
Well, it's voluntarism, isn't it?
That is voluntarism. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's interesting, Ben. How do you we talk to so many smart people, people who, like anyone from like, Gober, who's entertaining the ideas of, there aren't ice caps. Maybe there's an ice wall, or who knows what it is. But that really throws a wrench into the whole receding glacier conversation, right? I mean, it really reframes that. And then there's Marvin talking about eating raw flesh, and that vitamins don't exist, and you shouldn't even eat garden leaves. I mean, it's like, but these are smart smart. There's like this disparate, far-ranging opinions from very, very bright people.
Mm.
And then you have someone like Roman. He's written multiple books. He's poured over research for decades. Very, very bright, but kind of comes from maybe more of an old school, accepting cosmology as it's been told. How do you rationalize and make sense of it all? I'm asking you.
I think that there's a couple different topics in there that are important to separate. One is like lifestyle and nutrition specifically. So you've got really smart people. Some are choosing like carnivore or
Yep.
eating completely like uncooked meat. Some are choosing vegan and veganism. And as you pointed out, it's like what works for you. Find out what works for you. And oftentimes it is, as you pointed out, how we think about what we eat that
Yeah.
matters almost as much, maybe even more than what we are actually eating. I am not going to claim that there's any one way, and I'll maintain that. I'll probably maintain that until I die. I'm not going to ever point at someone's diet and say like, that's the way everyone should eat. I just think that's nonsense.
It is nonsense.
I've just seen people thrive a number of different ways.
There's more than one way to live.
There's more than one way to live. So that's the like lifestyle nutrition piece, but like the cosmology piece, that's again, it's a really interesting question because the blaming all these changes on carbon, I am at a place now where I'm really ready to, I am challenging that narrative. And some people are ready to do that. Some aren't. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm just trying to make sense of it all because I mean, well, first of all, back to the diet thing. I would like to see a chart. It's all about charts.
Okay.
Through the Steve Falconer esoteric biochemistry lens, is how much of people's zodiacal information lends them to lean towards a certain diet or not, to seek minerals via a particular diet based on their birthday, for lack of a better term, right? That'd be wild.
Go for it, man.
Right?
I'd say go for it.
Yeah.
Go for it. Is that how to what extent is that starting to push people in certain directions without them even knowing? This person went vegan maybe because they were called to fill their body with something that's determined by their birth date.
I have heard it come up, not so much through esoteric biochemistry, but through the zodiac in terms of, I forget who I was listening to, but probably someone on Alex's show, that they had a friend who was an earth sign, every way you sliced it, earth, 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 earth. And they were a vegan. And the conclusion was that this person is just like all about earth and things that grow from the earth. And it made perfect sense that they would be a vegan. So it's kind of just continuing that thought. The cosmological piece is interesting, Ben, because there's all this conversation around consciousness and that we manifest the realities as individuals, and we bring them into being through our belief systems. And so, I mean, that's a crazy rabbit hole that I don't know if we'll ever get to the bottom of.
I don't know either.
Like we dream it into being.
Well, even in the pursuit of the bottom of it, we create the bottom of it.
Yeah, it's like the mirrors in the dressing room that go on forever.
Yeah. And maybe we just need to be like, that's okay. But do we accept that that is the reality? Do we accept that that is the way things are? Right. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it's wild because I get a little whiplash on these conversations. Like, after talking with Marvin, he's saying, well, you probably the whole mercury in the fish thing is completely overblown and you should still be eating wild caught salmon from the oceans. But then you talk to Roman, it's like, yeah, but the microplastics and the pollution is everywhere. And we're 3 seconds to midnight and the rainforests and all that's kind of where I was at 5, 6, 7 years ago. That's more the Daniel Quinn thinking, is like species collapse, rainforest collapse. pole collapse, collapse, and there's then these other voices saying, yeah, it's fucked up and bad, but nothing's collapsing. That's all fear tactics.
Yeah, I wonder. Well, I think that then we should. I'm all the more interested in getting Roman on to find out what exactly he's discovered and what he puts in his book, what he argues. I don't
Yeah.
think anyone. I don't think anyone can argue that the rainforest is getting smaller. They're like with the cutting down of
Sure.
the rainforest to add, to create like space for cattle,
Right.
or whatever else they're doing. Like that doesn't seem like a good thing. I would say Daniel Quinn would be against the wholesale cutting down of rainforests,
Oh, absolutely.
strip mining, all these things that just really are an attack. It's an assault on nature. And Quinn was against that. And I continue to be against that. Is there a collapse? Is there going to be a fishery collapse? Well, I mean, there's not an infinite number of fishes. There's not an infinite number of, trees in the rainforest. Like eventually you will come to the end of it. And
Yeah.
that will be it's the Lorax.
Yeah.
Like eventually the trees are all cut down. And then what? And then what happens? And it looks like in some instances, like that is the direction we're going. There's not an infinite, well, maybe there is. I don't know. Is there an infinite? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's an infinite ocean and we couldn't possibly fill it all with microplastics. Is it a good idea that we put any microplastics in the ocean? I don't know. That also seems like a bad idea.
Agreed.
I don't think I don't think the rainforest is infinite. It seems like, through travels, people have discovered the edges of the rainforest and those are closing in. And we also know that like in my own town, they spray glyphosate to deal with Japanese knotweed. Like, is that a good idea? That's an attack on nature. It's also an attack on me. Like some sort of no-brainer aspects to environmentalism, the poisoning of our environment, like I can get behind without having to adopt any sort of cosmological belief system.
Correct. Yeah, especially when it's right in your own backyard because you can see it with your own eyes.
And just because, just because he's written an entire book, it doesn't mean I have to believe in every aspect of that book.
Yeah, no, I think I have a knee-jerk thing because I was all in on all of that.
Yeah.
Like that was my number one thing. And I feel like I got a little burned.
Yes.
And so in a reactionary sense, I kind of did a hard turn away from it just to get a little more perspective.
Yeah.
But again, there's nuance here.
There's
like
nuance.
Like everything else. And I don't think it's healthy to firmly be in any one camp. But I'm just really curious that's what I like about Dr. Rob Williams, because he's a doctor in environmental history and seems to have ended up more where we've ended up. And so I tend to trust him because he's been on both sides of the equation as well.
Right. Well, trust him on things like carbon is not the enemy.
Sure. Yep.
Right. Which is the main focus of the climate change activists. Carbon is the enemy. Yeah. Well, we'll get Roman back on and get to the bottom of his book on the environment. And I will get to the new Mammals album. Hopefully, I don't know if I get into the studio tomorrow. I should have it done by Saturday. Shouldn't have
tomorrow
a problem.
night.
Shouldn't have a problem. I'll turn that around pretty quick.
All right. Well, just give me. Don't release it before mine. Just make that deal with me.
Lastly, before we wrap, Red Pill Friends have a spring tour, March dates announced, and a brand spanking new website.
Yep, it's its own domain now, redpillfriends.com. It's not dangling off the side of the Mammals website. It's its own universe. Nice work. And tour dates. Yeah, some Hudson Valley, New York State shows, and one Connecticut show. We got West Shokan, New York, Philmont, New York, and Reading, Connecticut. And all the info, if you want to come to a show, if you're within striking distance, all are welcome. Check out the dates and the RSVP or ticket info at redpillfriends.com.
Love it. All right, folks, nothing you heard here should be taken as medical advice, as neither Mike nor I are medical experts. Remember that you are light, you are loved, you could be a professional musician with AI, and you are your primary healthcare provider. Thanks for tuning in, everyone, and we will catch you on the next one.